to a couple Big Ten player rankings brought out by Big Banter that they're first of, so they told me every Thursday we're going to drop a couple. So this is kind of the first wave of them. We have quarterbacks and running backs. So we're going to start here with quarterback, and Penn State's Drew Aller never started a game before. Comes in at number 7. I think having him in the middle, considering he hasn't started before, but he has all the upside in the world, is a pretty good spot to put him at. I don't know. We got to talk about him and then the rest of the board.
So I agree with you. I agree that him being 7th, right next to Kyle McCord, who's a very similar situation, is spot on. I think J.J. McCarthy is the most tested of all the Big Ten starting quarterbacks. So having him first, well, maybe Taulia has also been tested, but J.J. McCarthy has been more successfully tested than Taulia. So 1 and 3 are fine. 2 is seemingly ridiculous to me. I mean, what has Cade McNamara done besides be the backup to J.J. McCarthy to have him deserve second spot here, where you have the 2 transfers, Tanner Mordecai and Hudson Card from SMU and Texas, respectively, Hook'em Horns, that probably deserve to have shown more in college than Cade McNamara has. So I would put them above him at least. And probably I'd put Kyle McCord and Drew Aller above him. So,
to be fair, McNamara did lead Michigan to the playoffs 2 years ago. So, I mean, he was a whole season starter. Sure, we all thought he was a game manager, but he did start a whole season, led them to the playoffs. I'll give him some credit. I mean, looking at it from my perspective, yeah, McNamara should not be 2. I think putting him ahead of McCord and Aller for sure. There's not enough out there about either of them. McCord ahead of Aller because I think he's got that an extra year. He started a game also. Wasn't great when that one game he started, but still put up good stats. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Omeyer at 9 was kind of shocking to me because I thought the few times we saw him play at Ole Miss, he did well. He's going to a really good situation where he doesn't have to be all on him at Illinois. You know, they're going to run the ball, set it up, play good defense, and win games that way. So he really just has to be a really solid game manager and make 2 or 3 big throws every game, which I think he's capable of from what we've seen. We saw whatever the Minnesota's last name dude is. He played at the Whiteout against us. Obviously, a tough environment for your first career start ever, but he handled it well. So, I mean, I think the Big Ten's got some good quarterback play this year, and we'll kind of see how this shakes out throughout the year. But it's not too far off of where it should be, but there are some glaring mistakes, I would say.
Yeah, I think by year's end, I find a top 3 of McCarthy, McCord, and Aller, just based solely off of their potential and teams they play for. So I think it'll change. Taulia, I mean, is he even going to make it to the end of the season with that offensive line he has? That's a question too that's out there. So I think he has some talent. Nate and I, we talk about this, where a lot of his stats are against like Howard and Townsend at the beginning of the year, and then he gets in a Big Ten play, and there's not much going on there. So I don't know. We'll see if he drops off this year, but other than that, not too much wrong with this list.
Maryland doing well in September and then falling apart is the most predictable thing in college football. Illinois is interesting, especially because Penn State plays them early in the year, right? Without Chase Brown, and how is their running game going to be? Their defense is going to be very stout, and maybe this year their quarterback needs to do a little bit more because their running game won't be as good. It will be an interesting early season test for Penn State, though. That one.
Yeah.
A lot of transfers. A lot of first-year starters or first starters in this list here.
There is a lot of talent, though, too. So
yeah.
We'll kind of see who comes to gel with their team the most of these transfers and young guys, and kind of lead them to those victories and the good seasons that all these teams want.
Yeah. So really, only 2 of these guys were the full-time starter last year on their team, right? McCarthy and Taulia. Everyone else is either a transfer or a new starter, right? Wimsatt, I think, was he the full? He was so bad when Penn State played.
No, he was like their bad guy, I think.
Yeah, I think he only started to like actually start towards the end of the year. So he really only have 2 out of 14 starters from last year coming back to the same team, which is interesting.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to the running back one. And we weren't looking at this so much, I guess, from the rankings standpoint, but more like who has the best running back room, because as you can see, there's 5 schools on here twice. So it comes down to which room we would take than anything else.
Go ahead, Tyler. You start.
Can you even talk?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's all kind of subjective of how they're looking at it for this ranking. Are they really looking at it from production that's already happened or what's going to happen this year? I think we all know as Penn State fans that running back room has all the expectations in the world and potential in the world of what they're able to do with Katron and Nick Singleton in the backfield. But I mean, it's hard to ignore what Michigan has done with that solid game plan that they build every week, the offensive line they've built over the years, and then having both Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum back there. So it's just really hard to ignore that. I think it's really consensus around everywhere, from expert reporters to average Joes like us, that it's Penn State and Michigan are the 2 best rooms. Ohio State's clearly the 3rd, and then from there, there's like a drop down. Obviously, Wisconsin's going to have a good room. Maryland's going to have a good room. I'm sure Illinois is going to have a good running game just with her whole style. But it's really Penn State and Michigan at the top, with Wisconsin or Ohio State the 3rd, and then everyone else.
Yep. To distinguish between Michigan and Penn State, I mean, like, I don't know. This is fine either way. I think one of them, one of Nick Singleton being better than Blake Corum or vice versa, and then one of Donovan Edwards being better than or higher ranked than Katron or vice versa is probably okay. The one thing that is a little bit of pause with Blake Corum, even though he's released a lot of videos lately, doing workouts, is he's coming off an ACL tear. That's not like, I know it's not 30 years ago where that was a big problem, but it's still a little bit of, it's not an automatic that he's going to be fine again. Having Donovan Edwards as your next guy up is pretty damn good, though. So I think you'd be happy with either one of them combined with their defense, combined with their quarterback play, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
I do think Ohio State's being a little bit overlooked here. I don't know why. I mean, having them 4 and 8, Travion Henderson 2 years ago was, what Nick Singleton was last year.
Right.
So now he's fallen back behind Braylon Allen, which, okay, fine. But
yeah, I will say, I think a lot of Michigan fans would tell you that Donovan Edwards might be more talented than Corum too, which is an interesting thing. Obviously, I think he's built a little better to be an NFL back. I think if you ask him who's going to have a better NFL career, the majority would say Edwards. So, him being 6 is a little interesting considering a lot of their fans consider him the best running back on the team, and Corum was like the running back of the year last year in the entire country. So that's an interesting one. I will say, not to sound totally biased with this Penn State group, but there's 2 things about these 2 guys that makes you lean to take them. And the first one is the fact that they're only sophomores. So if we're talking about which group I get, well, I get this group for 2 years, not just 1, whereas Corum and Henderson are probably gone after this year. And I think Williams is also gone after this year for Ohio State. So I get this group a year, an additional year. And then the other thing is health. I know it was only 1 year, but Singleton and Allen suited up in every game, whereas Corum was banged up. Henderson was banged up. I think Williams was a little banged up too at points. So healthier group there. So I think that plays into it a little bit. And the other thing is, because these guys are just freshmen, they haven't reached their full potential yet, whereas everyone else on this list is pretty much a junior or a sophomore, a redshirt sophomore or something like that. So I think there's a little more to take away with Singleton and Allen.
I do think that's a very good point. So Donovan Edwards going into his 3rd year, Blake Corum going into his 4th year.
4th year, yeah.
And like what you mentioned, Donovan Edwards scares me more, I guess, when he's on the field or when he was last year. So he against Penn State, he ran 16 times for 173 yards, 10.8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Blake Corum, he ran 28 times for 166. So, I don't know. It's burned in my mind that Donovan Edwards, if anybody is going to is going to have a ball game against Penn State, it's him rather than Blake Lawrence. We'll see.
Yeah, I could see that.
7.1 yards a carry for the year, Donovan Edwards on only 140 carries, but that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, that is good. Tyler, anything else?
You guys hit it all. I mean, it's going to be completely subjective at this point in the year. It just comes down to who kind of succeeds more during the year at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That Maryland duo, a little interesting. We were talking about Littleton, not really little at all, right? 6 foot 265, something like that. So
that was as a recruit too. Who knows what he's at now?
Yeah, I'd have to check their official roster, but yeah, interesting to see the Maryland duo on there because we were talking. I don't know anything about the Maryland running backs because they ran for I think 30 yards against Penn State when I was there, so I couldn't tell you anything about these guys because they were non-existent the only time I saw them play.
I mean, something else we hit on too before going on live here. Trey Potts came over from Minnesota, was a successful guy for 4 years there. And now he's a third string back, which that's always a great bonus to have when you have a veteran guy that has experience in the Big Ten. Kind of be that change of pace for us if we need him on a third and long, if we need a little screen guy or pass protection. You know, that senior veteran knows what he's doing in that. He's going to provide that spark no matter how he gets on the field and plays for us.
Yep. And after Kevon Lee left, there was a big hole to fill, right? Where you were down to your 2 sophomore running backs as the only scholarship guys you had. So good for him to come over.
Yeah. They also, now you don't have to rush. You have 2 freshmen coming in, one coming off an ACL tear last August, and the other one I think weighs like 160 pounds. So to not have to throw either of those 2 guys into any meaningful action is also pretty big for them to be able to bring in Potts.